Title: The Midnight Patient of Fitzsimons. The silence of Fitzsimons Hospital's East Wing was overwhelming. At 2:58 a.m. the halls were empty, the only sound the hum of ventilators and distant echoing footsteps from night shift staff. Clara West, a first-year medical intern, adjusted the ID badge clipped to her scrubs and flicked on her flashlight. She had always been skeptical about ghost stories. The rumors among staff about the midnight patient were just that, rumors. Yet tonight, Clara's rotation put her in the old wing during the dreaded 3:33 a.m. hour. She'd volunteered for the overnight shift hoping to get experience. Now those rumors felt like a weight in her chest. At 3:33 a.m. everything convulsed. The fluorescent lights plunged and came back with a dull, sickly glow. The entire corridor vibrated with a low hum. A distant wail, barely audible, echoed through the halls. Clara froze in place as she heard a soft, sorrowful whisper, "Help me." Her flashlight flickered fiercely, and the hallway stretched beyond logic. Shadows moved at the edges of her vision. In that moment, her flashlight beam caught a figure ahead, a silhouette in a nurse's uniform, pale and motionless, walking slowly toward her. Their arms hung limp. Their steps were silent. Clara's breath caught. She called out, "Hello? Are you okay?" The figure did not respond. It kept walking until it rounded the corner and vanished. She spun the beam around. Empty hallway. No one. Faint echoes of footsteps lingered, but no physical presence remained. She came to room 502. The door was slightly ajar. Clara's flashlight illuminated the inside, a hospital bed with crumpled sheets, a bedside table with an empty pill tray, and, on the table, an ID bracelet. It glinted under the light, patient. The blank space chilled her. Her radio crackled. A whisper, near her ear, "You see me now." She froze. She whirled around. No one. The door slammed behind her with sudden force. The East Wing was one of the oldest parts of the hospital, once part of the military base compound. It had been mothballed for years, with only a few corridors active. The peeling paint, flickering fluorescent lights, and abandoned rooms gave it a haunted feel even in daylight. Clara moved along, checking doors, verifying equipment, and making notes. At 3:10 a.m. a sudden chill brushed past her neck. The temperature dropped a few degrees. The lights buzzed overhead. Clara paused, shining her flashlight down the corridor. Nothing seemed out of place, until the door at the far end creaked. She froze, heart pounding. Moments later, the overhead screens in the nurse's station flickered and went dark. Her radio crackled with static. She called to the night staff, but only static answered. She glanced at her watch, 3:28 a.m. The heart rate she saw on the monitor across from her dropped to flatline for a second before returning to life. She chalked it up as an electrical glitch, but her instincts pricked her skin. She moved on toward room 500 to check on vital signs, passing dusty beds and broken monitors. In the mirror above the sink, she saw the pale nurse's figure standing just behind her. Eyes hollow, face indistinct. Clara whirled again, but the hallway behind her was empty. The lights cut out. Blackness swallowed her. She fumbled with her flashlight, it flickered back on. The figure was gone. She turned to run out of the room, but the corridor had changed. The layout was wrong. Doors she passed earlier were not there. The walls felt closer. Time seemed to twist. Clara quickened her pace, pressing the ID swipe at dead ends. Her radio sputtered, West 1, do you copy?" Only silence answered. At the end of what seemed like hours, but was only minutes, she burst into the main lobby. The clock read 4:17 a.m. Was that even possible? Her pulse transmitted through her veins. She clutched her chest. She was no longer sure of anything, if she had ever left the old wing at all. Her shift ended. She packed her things. But she left with more than fatigue. She left with questions. The following night, Clara tried to convince herself it was just exhaustion, her mind playing tricks under stress. She told no one about what she saw. The hospital was strict about mental fitness for interns, and she wasn't going to risk her career over a ghost story. But sleep didn't come easy. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw room 502. The door ajar. The empty bracelet. And that whisper, "You see me now." She arrived early for her next shift, hoping to put it all behind her, but as she passed the East Wing's corridor again, she noticed something she hadn't seen before, an old plaque near the elevator shaft, dusty and cracked. It read, "In memory of Nurse Elise Moore, 1947-1973. Below the name was a faded photo. The face in the image matched the figure she had seen. Hollow-eyed. Silent. Dressed in a vintage nurse uniform. Clara shivered. Later, during rounds, she brought it up subtly with an older nurse named Rosa. "Hey, who was Elise Moore?" Rosa looked up from her chart, her face tightening. "Where did you hear that name?" "There's a plaque near the east elevator," Clara said casually. Rosa set her pen down. That plaque was supposed to be removed. Elise Moore died in 1973, she was found dead in room 502 during a night shift. Some say she overdosed, others said it was something else. Clara frowned. "What do you mean?" "They never released a cause of death," Rosa whispered. But after that night, that entire wing began having incidents. Patients swore they saw a nurse who didn't speak. Monitors would go haywire. Staff refused to work past 3:30 a.m. in that section. Clara's stomach churned. "And the bracelet in that room, why was it blank?" Rosa blinked. "No one's supposed to be in that room. It's been sealed for years." Clara didn't answer. She knew what she saw. That night, she made a decision. She was going back into the East Wing, this time with her phone to document what she saw. If she was going to lose her mind, she at least wanted proof. 3:15 a.m. She crossed the threshold again. Every step made the air thicker. Her phone's flashlight danced across the cracked tiles and flaking wallpaper. The corridor hummed. Lights flickered above. She reached room 502. The door was no longer ajar, it was wide open. Inside, the bed was perfectly made. The bracelet was gone.
But on the mirror written in condensation were the words, "You see me again." A loud bang echoed down the hall. Clara spun around. Her phone's light flickered and then she saw it. Down the corridor, a hospital gurney rolled on its own wheels, slamming into the far wall with unnatural force. Her breathing quickened. She turned back to the room and there she was. Nurse Elise. Standing by the bed, motionless. Pale skin. Hollow eyes. Her mouth opened slightly but instead of a voice, a choking, watery sound escaped. A mix between a gasp and a sob. Clara took a step back. Elise raised her hand and pointed. Clara turned to look and on the wall, a single photograph had appeared. A group of nurses from the 1970s, and Elise in the center, circled in red ink. A caption below read, "The one they forgot." And then blackout. The lights failed. Clara screamed as her flashlight cut out. Darkness engulfed her. And then a touch. Cold fingers brushed her arm. "Whisper in her ear, tell them I never left." She ran. But on the mirror written in condensation were the words, "You see me again." A loud bang echoed down the hall. Clara spun around. Her phone's light flickered and then she saw it. Down the corridor, a hospital gurney rolled on its own wheels, slamming into the far wall with unnatural force. Her breathing quickened. She turned back to the room and there she was. Nurse Elise. Standing by the bed, motionless. Pale skin. Hollow eyes. Her mouth opened slightly but instead of a voice, a choking, watery sound escaped. A mix between a gasp and a sob. Clara took a step back. Elise raised her hand and pointed. Clara turned to look, and on the wall, a single photograph had appeared. A group of nurses from the 1970s, and Elise in the center, circled in red ink. A caption below read, "The one they forgot." And then blackout. The lights failed. Clara screamed as her flashlight cut out. Darkness engulfed her. And then a touch. Cold fingers brushed her arm. "Whisper in her ear, tell them I never left." She ran. Fumbling through the pitch-black corridors, stumbling over loose floor tiles and rusted carts, she found the door to the lobby, but it wouldn't open. Her badge scanner blinked red. Behind her, slow footsteps. Deliberate. Getting closer. Clara banged on the door, crying out, "Please! Somebody! Let me out!" The scanner blinked green. The door hissed open. She fell through to the lobby, gasping. The clock read 4:06 a.m. Security found her moments later, pale and trembling. She told them nothing. But on the camera footage they saw something chilling. Room 502's door opening on its own. A figure in a nurse uniform. A second later the camera feed cut to black. Clara didn't quit her internship. But something in her changed after that night. She told no one about what really happened. Not even Rosa. The footage was quietly wiped. Security called it a glitch, though none could explain why the door to room 502 had opened or who the shadowy figure was. But Clara knew. She had seen the face. Felt the cold. It was Nurse Elise Moore. And she wasn't a ghost stuck in some loop she was watching. Aware. And reaching out. In the days that followed, Clara began researching. Every spare minute went into digging through old hospital archives. The records were scattered, many water-damaged or missing entirely. But what she did find painted a disturbing picture. In 1973, Nurse Elise had reported multiple cases of patient mistreatment and mysterious overdoses in the East Wing. No one listened to her. She pushed harder, filed internal complaints. A week later, she was dead in room 502. The case was ruled an accident. No autopsy. No police report. And then, the wing was quietly shut down for renovations. That evening, she called a friend from her med school who had access to nationwide medical records. An hour later, she had her answer. Dr. Harold Ames died in 1986, in a psychiatric facility. He had been diagnosed with severe dissociative psychosis. Before his death, he confessed to taking the weak ones for the experiment. There were no official records of what the experiment was. Clara stared at the screen in disbelief. Back at the hospital, strange things began happening again. Room 502 was still off limits, but now nurses heard crying from behind the door. One tech swore he saw a woman in a nurse's uniform staring from the dark window. Monitors flickered. Machines failed. Patients started having night terrors in nearby rooms. Clara knew this wasn't over. Elise wanted justice. Clara decided to take one final risk. She requested access to the old basement storage, where some of the hospital's original documents were archived. After hours, armed with a flashlight and sheer will, she descended into the dusty underbelly of Fitzsimmons. The basement was cold, unnaturally cold. Rows of old filing cabinets lined the walls. She searched under E for Elise Moore. Nothing. Then under A. Ames. She found a folder. Water-stained, fragile. Inside were old patient logs, some dating back to 1972. Scrawled notes in the margins mentioned names, patients who died mysteriously. All were under Dr. Ames. And one note, in Elise's handwriting, he's using them. I have to stop him. Even if it kills me. At the bottom of the folder was a photograph of Elise and 3 children in a hospital room. She was smiling. The kids looked terrified. Behind them, through the glass door, Dr. Ames. Watching. The file confirmed it. Elise had discovered what Ames was doing and paid for it with her life. Clara felt something brush her shoulder. She turned fast. No one. But the smell of antiseptic filled the air. And a faint whisper, "You know now." She fled the basement with the folder, determined to bring the truth to light. But as she reached the stairs, her phone buzzed. A message. No number. Just a photo. It was room 502. And inside, a figure standing near the bed. Elise. Waiting. The following morning, Dr. Claire Hargrove returned to the hospital with only a few hours of sleep. The weight of the night before still hung heavy on her mind. The whispers in the ICU, the flickering lights, and the mysterious patient that disappeared from the records, all of it pointed towards something far beyond her understanding. Claire had always believed in science. In data. In reason. But now, for the first time in her life, she couldn't explain what was happening at Denver General. She stepped into the hospital, the lobby now feeling colder, emptier, and somehow, watchful. Nurses looked pale and on edge. Even the security guard, who normally greeted her with a nod, barely looked up. Claire went straight to the old West Wing, where most of the strange events had occurred. This part of the hospital had been closed years ago due to asbestos and outdated wiring, but recently, patients were being temporarily shifted there due to renovations in the East Wing. As she entered the hallway, the scent of mildew and disinfectant hit her hard. The walls were cracked, and the flickering ceiling lights buzzed like dying insects. A cold breeze passed through the corridor, though there were no windows open. Her footsteps echoed as she passed each room. Most were empty, but room 302 caught her attention. It was the room where the patient Martha L. had last been seen. Claire stepped in. Empty. Except for one thing. On the wall, scratched into the paint, were the words. They never left. Claire backed out quickly, her heart thudding. As she turned the corner to leave the wing, she saw someone standing at the end of the hall. A nurse. In an old, outdated uniform. White cap. Long skirt. Pale skin. But there was no sound. No footsteps. The figure simply stood, staring. Then turned and walked into a room that had been sealed for years. Claire rushed after her, calling out, "Excuse me. Nurse." She pushed open the door, just dust, broken equipment, and silence. Dash dash. The research deepens. Claire needed answers. She spent the rest of her day diving into hospital archives. She found something strange: a series of patient deaths that happened in that same West Wing, all within a span of 2 weeks in 1978. All unexplained. All marked as complications despite healthy vitals before death. One name came up repeatedly in the records. Nurse Evelyn Hart. Claire froze when she saw the staff photo. It was the same nurse she saw in the hallway. Evelyn had died in 1979, in that very wing. She was rumored to be deeply involved in some kind of ritualistic practice, possibly trying to cleanse the souls of the dying, but things went terribly wrong. Patients began to report voices whispering their names at night, seeing dark shapes standing at the foot of their beds, and a sense of being watched every moment. Then came the deaths. 7 patients. All found lifeless. No clear medical cause. And one night, Evelyn herself disappeared. Her body was later found in the old supply closet, wrist slit, a bloodied note beside her that read, "I failed them. Return to the source." Claire was determined now. That evening, she returned to the West Wing. This time, she brought her phone to record everything. As she stepped into the hallway, her flashlight cut through the darkness. The air grew heavy. Room 302. She entered again. This time, the temperature dropped instantly. Her breath clouded in front of her. Suddenly, her phone flickered and died. She turned and there she was. Nurse Evelyn. Standing by the bed. Her face pale, eyes hollow. Evelyn slowly raised a finger and pointed to the floor beneath the bed. Claire knelt down. There, under the bed, was a metal box, half rusted. She pulled it out, trembling. Inside were patient bracelets, all from 1978. Each with the names of the patients who had died. And a final bracelet. Claire Hargrove. Her blood ran cold. A voice echoed in the room. "Finish what I couldn't." Then silence. Evelyn was gone. As the sun began to rise over Denver, the hospital stood in eerie silence, broken glass shimmering like ice on the floor, old patient files fluttering in the cold wind sneaking through broken windows. Amira and David, bruised but alive, limped toward the main entrance, carrying the hospital's last remaining secrets in a dusty file marked, "The Lost Ward 1974." The file revealed that several experiments were done on patients during the Cold War, unethical, unsanctioned, and horrific. The cries they heard weren't just echoes, they were imprints, a spiritual residue from tortured souls who had never left. The twisted nurse they'd seen once real. Her name, Margot Keane, known as the Angel of Denver before she lost her mind and vanished. Just as they stepped out, the hospital lights flickered on behind them, even though there was no power. A silhouette appeared in the top window, staring down at them. It was Margot. But this time, she didn't chase them. She simply watched. Amira whispered, "Let us never come back." They didn't. To this day, no one has dared enter Denver Hospital again. Locals say the spirits there aren't evil, just forgotten. But if you ever hear a soft lullaby near the ruins, run. It means she's awake. Moral: some doors are meant to stay closed. Not every mystery needs solving, especially when it was buried for a reason.